for giving us the opportunity to talk with you, to meet you. So we will start. We are the Caballeros Coffee from Honduras. The story of our farm, we can divide in two parts. One part from my side, and then that second part when we met with Moises. My family started working in coffee since 1907. Was my great grandfather. Then my father, my mother, because I came from coffee family from my mother's side. Then my mother, so I can tell you that I always live in coffee. I don't know another way to live, just coffee, and I hope God give me life to die in coffee too, because it's what I want to do since I was a child. And then in 1996, we got married with Moises, and we start Finca El Puente. But Moises started Finca El Puente in 1993 when he arrived to Honduras. He's from Guatemala. And he arrived to Honduras. He started to buy land and coffee farm just for invest, because he wanted to sell then and go back to Guatemala. But I didn't let him go. So he's in Honduras. We are living in Honduras. So I would like to talk about our model. Since we got married, we wanted to have a model to follow in our business, in our family. So we can start with the family. For us, we truly believe that the family is the base of the society. So for us, it was very important to be good as a family. In the way that you are good as a family, you can be good with the people that work with you, with your farms, and all around will work in a better way if we are good. Then the social, I will tell about the environment first. So the environment is super important for us. We take care of the forest. We have around 150 hectares of just forest to take care and to have a good environment for the farms. And we have different lots of farms. And we can tell you that maybe in between 5-6 lots, we have a forest too. It's very important to take care of the soil. We practice to do every year a soil test, so we know, in that case, we know what the farms need, what the soil needs. So, and we apply compost. Every year, we make our own compost to apply to the farms. And with the soil test, we know what we are going to apply. And at the last, but is not the less important, is one of as important as the other, is our social, is the people that work with us. So it's very important, the people that stay with us, we care that they are good, that they have a good education, that they have health system. We provide to the health center that are near from the farm, medicine, that because the health system in our country is not so good. So we try to help at the school too. For example, we talking about environment too. We clean our farm all manual. We don't use any herbicide, because for us it's very important that people maintain with work all the year long. So we don't carry people from one place to another. The people that work with us, they live around the community that we have the farms. And we feel proud that the communities where the farm are around are good communities that the kids, every year we have more kids at the school than the last year. That is very, very important for us. And after this one, okay, we are located in 4 different. Podemos ver lo otro, ¿verdad? Okay, this is Honduras. We are in the southwest of Honduras. This is our state, La Paz, and we have different farms in different municipalities. Our main place is Chinacla, where is the mill where we process the coffee. We have here around 36 different lots of farm. When we are talking about lots, we talk some lots are half hectare, another lots are 10, 40 hectares, so different size of lots. In Chinacla, we have farms in Marcala. In Marcala, we have around 9 lots. San Jose, we have 11 lots. And in Santa Ana, we have 3 different lots. So this is the farms that we have in the state. Process is Moises. Okay, I will see. Okay, Moises.
Maybe I want to back a bit. Talking about this, sorry. Good morning. Thank you. And in this picture, you can see like this is our the facility like we have. We can in the beginning we start just with the wet mill, but then we start to grow. And like Marysabel say, in the beginning in 1993, I remember always like I never imagined, and I can stay in this moment, because in 1993 when I bought the first farm, we need in the harvest time we need to rent a mule to transport the coffee because it was enough. But now you can see it's not like enough. You can see trucks, you can see tractors, you can see cars, and but one very good like when Marysabel talked about the environment was in the behind you can see the mountain. When I arrived, and I remember when I arrived in 1992 in this place, one day we start to talk with the last owner for this mill, and then talk about like some local people start to cut the forest just to plant in corn. And I told him, it's very sad because they are destroying the forest. Maybe they want to sell the land. And it's a little girl next to us, and then disappeared the girl. 5 minutes later, she arrived and said, my dad says he can sell the land for you. And, we bought this, but in that moment, because in that time, in the wet mill, we use a lot of water. It's like a normal model, like you can see even now in some place in Guatemala or Kenya, they use a lot of water. But one of the problems for this is like not how water you can use. The problem is how you can clean this water. Because when have a contact with the coffee, even in cherry, the water is dirty. And then you need to clean. And this is more difficult to do. But the other thing is very important for us is we keep this land, and now at least 15 different small communities took the water for drink just for this spring water. And then these things make us like a little proud, because even now we maintain this, because in another way probably is the people destroy the forest. And then in talking about the mill, we have we start to grow. And in the beginning was farmed just in Chinacla, but then we had some farms in Santa Ana. And 2 years ago, Marysabel's father want to start the process to retire, and he's all us like a 75% of his farm, and this is the reason we add like another farms in Marcala and in Santa Ana, in San Jose, sorry. And then we, since the beginning, we start to work with one exporter in San Pedro Sula, is the industrial capital from Honduras, because it's very close to the port. And he, in that moment, he processed for us all the parchment. But after some years, he grew a lot, and he started to tell us it's impossible for me to process a small batch because it's not available to work 10 bags, 5 bags. And for this, we start to add, and now we process. We make all the process in our own facility. We add, we have a dry mill for parchment, and since we start the process to process some naturals, we add some special mill just for naturals too. And normally in our countries, Central America, Colombia, Mexico, was everyone know before, because our countries produce and process mainly wash coffees, just in pergamino. But I start to work in this way in parchment, just to wash coffees, and then the people, the buyers, start to ask for some naturals. And for me, especially for me, was a little hard to make this change, to move in this, because I am not used to work. But Marysabel pushed me, and we start to produce some naturals. And then after this, we start to work with Nordic, and Nordic start to push us to produce more naturals. And now we process like at least like 80% still are wash coffees, but we produce some naturals coffee, mainly for Nordic, and I am sure for some of you. And after naturals, the buyers start to ask for another process, like anaerobic process, but honestly, for us, it's not usually, and we don't have too much experience about this. And another thing is like for the anaerobics coffees, normally we need more infrastructure, because it's not easy. We need we start to make this experiment in very simple way, like the barrels. And sometimes it's not available for us to buy bulbs we made with some bottle of water and some. But we start to process some anaerobics. But after this, we start and then the produce anaerobic coffees is very limited for the space, for the infrastructure. And then we start to talk about and try to find another way. And in the beginning, we call semi-anaerobic, but the buyers start to ask, what means semi-anaerobic? It's like it's not a rooster, it's not a hen. Then we change the name to extended fermentation. And for the extended fermentation, normally the way and for the anaerobic too, and the extended fermentation, we start to make some experiments like how many times. Because sometimes the producer just follow one recipe, but we need to know how is the environment, because depend the environment and every place will be different. And then we start to make some experiment. We start with 24 hours, but the coffee tastes like a natural, not too much change. We tried with 48, 72 hours, 96, 120 hours, 120, sorry. And then in 120 we know, and 96 is too much funky. and 48 hours is not too much. But then we decide 72 hours in our environment works. And we start to do in this process for the anaerobic, and we start to use the extended fermentation. But for the extended fermentation is very simple. We use the bags, the normal bags like we have, but we put some plastic bag like a Grain Pro, but it's not Grain Pro because it's, for us it's expensive, the Grain Pro. We use the plastic. We seal it for 72 hours. We left sometimes in the shade, sometimes in the sun, depend the time of the harvest. And this like always 72 hours, and then after 72 hours, we send to the patios or to the beds, depend the capacity we have in the moment. But after this, we start to talk another process. And then Joanne tell us and send us the instruction, like you see this kind of in the patios, like the black plastic. And we put the nickname confite, not me, but the worker, because they see like it's like a candy. And then this is the reason the name is confite. And we start to do this process. But until now, we continue with the process. And then now we produce wash coffees, natural coffees, extended fermentation coffees, and anaerobic coffees, and confite. But, you know, and for sometimes, not sometimes, always, to have a very good quality in the cup, we need to have a very good controls in the farm too. And especially now, because we have a lot of problem with the change in the weather change a lot. Sometimes we have a lot of rain, sometimes we don't have too much rain. And 2011 was one of the huge problems with the leaf rust. Then they changed the style of the life for us, how we can manage all the farms. And then we need to have many controls in the farms. And like I am telling you before, in the beginning, I start to try to manage all the process in a coffee. But one of the problem in like a producer is like the producer are not professional in the agronomic, because my degree in the university was accounting, and I don't know how I am working in agronomic way. But we start to try to know in the farms. But in that moment, because we grow, and now we are managed like just coffee, like 350 hectares, it's impossible for us. And now we need to hire one man just for the agronomic things, because we want to start to work more in the professional way, to have controls about the disease, about the fungus, about the new varieties, about the age of the varieties, because sometimes we know now when you have very old trees, trees are most susceptible to the leaf rust. How manage the fertilizer and all the things. And then we want to go forward to looking for be more professional in that. And then back in the production. And production, you can taste in some samples, and sometimes we produce like a blend, but in another time we produce like a specific lot of the farm. And the way is very simple. After we dry the coffee, we used to put this label. In the label we have some information. For example, in Spanish say muestra means samples. Samples means and this is 143 means like is the 143 lot we work until this day. The date like we process, the humidity for the coffee, and what machine we use to dry the coffee, and what time, what day we start to put the coffee in a dryer, where is the coffee from, when the coffee is ready to finish, and who is the person in charge to dry this specific lot. Because it's very simple, but help us to have some traceability of the coffee, because and in the end, if we have some problem, we can identify which sample is the problem, or if we can taste separate, and then we can decide to use like a blend, or we can decide to use like a micro lot, depend how is the score. After this, we send the samples to the cupping lab. Bless you. We send the coffees to the cupping laboratory to taste the coffees before send the samples to the different buyers like we have. And then in a warehouse, it's a little difficult to maintain this traceability, but we try to do this in every single bag, have the same number of the sample, and that way we can identify the coffee too in the warehouse. And then we are so blessed, we are so lucky, because all our coffee we have a direct trade relation, and this have a very good for us, because we have a very long-term partnership, and this specific help us when the pandemic arrived, because the pandemic arrived in the moment we are in the highest point of the harvest, and then for us was very difficult, and for the farms, because we have a lot of ripe coffee, for the process, because we are not available to transport, to manage the people, to send the samples, after this to mill, how we can ship the coffees. But thanks God, because we have a direct relation. If we have a long-term partnership, we can handle this and help us in many ways. Help us to send the coffee, to ship the coffee, help us to provide in that difficult time work for the people too, try to find a way to work, because we saw our farm like a family, and then help us, and for us it's too important to have the direct relation, is a long-term relation. And thank you so much.
Maybe I'm going to pull some chairs forward so you can sit down a little bit.
¿Quiere sentarse, mi mamá? Siéntate, pues.
Okay.
Like a kid.
Yeah, we're at school. Yeah, thank you very much. It's always lovely to hear you talk. Even though I heard a lot of about you always for some years, but it's also always good for me to hear more and to speak about what you do. So thank you very much. Mm-hmm. So, does anybody have any questions? For Marysabel.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Hi, thank you for the beautiful presentation. I have a question about the organic certificate. Are you guys planning to get the organic certificate? It seems like everything's organic practice, no fertilizer. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Until now, sometimes we are thinking, but in the end, like for the experience, it's like in the market, a lot of people have the certification just like a paper. For us, we believe it's more important to work in the farm in the correct way. And maybe in the future, if it's necessary, we know for us will be more easy to take this certification, because we already work in that way in the farms.
Just to add to that, like, are there challenges to get certified in Honduras?
The other is it's very, sometimes it's difficult to have this certification because usually this the process they made for the co-ops, not for the single producer. Then it's not usual to have like a single producer this certificate.
And for example, sometimes when we make the soil test, there are some lots that they say don't apply more organic material because you have excess of organic, because we used to put every year organic material to the farm. So we work in, as Moises say, trying to do in the best way. But it's something that we could
do
think
because
about
we are
in
open
the
to do this.
future. Yes, some lot, at least some lots of organic.
Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding the climate change. Do you make any change in terms of covering, in terms of variety or shade, according to the climate change situation?
Yes, we always are worried about this, and we start to believe the producer start to choose the easy way, and the easy way is to change the variety. But we personally, I don't think is the best way, because you need to create a microclimate in your farm. And for this reason, we start to talk like for us, the future of the coffee is the past of the coffee. Means like we need to start to produce like the old generation work. And then that's mean we need to start, we already start because every year we planting around 5,000 trees for shade. And we believe like we need to put a lot of shade in our farms to help to create this better environment for the coffee.
And we have to anticipate to that. For example, the shade is very important. We think in 10 years, if the farm doesn't have shade, it won't survive, because it's a lot, that change is coming very fast. And another thing that we have doing too is to plant more separate the trees. As Moises said, as the people from before used to do, because like 20 years ago, the agronomists in the country, they start to tell us that we could plant like 4,000 trees per manzana. And that became a lot of problem, a lot of fungus, and a lot of disease. But then we start to see that if we plant less trees per manzana, we say manzana like a hectare, you have more wind, the sun comes more, and you have the shade. So it's a lot of practices that we are start to do, just anticipating for the worst time that is coming, because it's going to come.
How was this year's harvest when we think about climate change? Is there any difference from the last year?
Yes, these are totally different. For example, in our areas, because Honduras is in the middle of two oceans, and then we have some dependent area. Just in Marcala is one of the place is like the border between the two influences. One side of the mountain is the influence to the Atlantic, and the other side is to the Pacific. And the Pacific influence is more dry, and the Atlantic is more wet. And then normally, since I arrived in Honduras 30 years ago, normally between the second half of December to March was usually to have at least 20-25 days with rain. No heavy rain, but some rain. But this year was very totally different because we have just 3 times rain. And we expect now that the people start to expect we are this year we will be in the El Niño influence, means less rain, and the other is like the rain before the rain come more divide spread in the time. Now we have like a heavy rains, and then this is another problem because it's concentrated in one moment in the day, just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and we talk, when we have the coffee with no shade, it's easy to the rain wash the soil because it's too heavy and then take all the nutrients for the soil. And yes, we have every year we see different change.
For example, this year, just because we didn't have too much rain, we have more sun, the ripeness concentrate in few times. Other time we have to pick just one tree, we have to pass 5 times just to pick just the ripe. This year we have just three times because the ripeness was more even than before, and that's why.
And the other is this have a influence and affect the quality of the coffee, because sometimes the cherry looks ripe, but inside the beans is not completely have the process, and then it's difficult. And sometimes before was easier for us to have a coffees like 88, 89. Now we are so happy when we score the coffees at 87. And this is one of the things the buyer need to understand, because it's not easy. It not depend for us. It depends for many aspects in the life.
Yeah, thank you guys. When you're changing practices or methods on your farm, or you're getting feedback on specific lots, how do you communicate that something needs to either change, or we're going to try different practice to the different teams around the different municipalities? Or are there very specific differences between different places?
This is one of the good thing when you have a relationship, because sometimes they tell you something that is happening in the coffee. For example, in here they told us, we saw something in the coffee. Okay, so we receive feedback from them. And for example, in the community, it's this year we know that El Niño is going to come, so we know that it's going to be more dry
weather.
Yeah,
and now in that time is more easy compared with the past, because we have access for the social media, for everything, and now we can find better information like before. But one of the most important is how you can communicate these things to the workers, because in the end, probably I can take all the information, but if this information is not available to communicate another workers, is more difficult. Then we try to maintain the relation with the buyers, with the customer, with the employees, with the workers, with everything, to try to maintain a better communication.
And with other producers too. For example, we visit Panama this year, and in Panama, the producer told us they have they were affected with one disease. So we know almost always when they have some disease, some explosion of one disease, we have the next year with us. So we anticipate, okay, maybe we will have that one, so we have to prepare for it and check in the farm.
Yeah, but then, for example, in 2011, when is the leaf frost problem, we learned a lot about this, because in that moment we learned about we need to have a very good nutrition in the trees. When we learn about we need to have a very young trees, because if you have bad nutrition, all trees is the worst way to, is the easy way to have the leaf rust. And then we try to take information for all the world.
It's like the human being. You have to eat well. The young people, they have less disease. When we are getting old, we got more disease, so we have to so we have to have better nutrition. It's the same with the plants. We don't know if we answered your question.
Yes,
It was
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. There's a lot of discussion about infused coffees these days. How is your take on that as a producer?
Infuse.
Yeah, this is like a new fashion.
Moises loves new fashion.
No, I tried, and you know, this year, and we just come to Portland, and in Portland they have this kind of discussion about this, and just is my opinion. Sometimes I am not comfortable with these things, because for me the coffee is coffee, and like a producer we don't need to add anything in the coffee, because like probably this thing is in the side of the roaster, and then sometimes we can destroy the quality, and I am more happy with produce a very good coffees, and then if the roaster want to make another process, it's okay too. But I think so everyone enjoy a good cup of coffee, and then well,
I wanted to tell it's like if you have commercial coffees and you have lower quality of coffee, I think it works to add something to get like a 2 or 3 points. But when you have a good coffee, I think it's like when you have beautiful eyes, why you put a color? It's like this. But
okay.
I have a question regarding the community. All the pickers are surrounding the farms. Everyone is complaining that they don't have pickers, they don't have people to work. How did you manage to keep them there and being happy around the farm?
It's not easy.
It's not
And
easy.
we have some that left, but no like we listen to other. One thing that we do is we maintain with work all the year long the people that work around the farm. So other producer doesn't do it. They just they clean and then not work. They fertilize and no work then. But we try. That's why we clean manually. That help us to maintain with work them. We, thanks to the relationship that we have, they receive a better salary than the people around them. Another thing, we have some projects with them.
Yeah, we try to maintain the good relation, but in that time it's so difficult, because in everywhere a lot of people start to move to the United States, to Spain.
Yes.
And this have another problem. It have a problem for the people stay in our countries, because now especially the new generation, then they don't want to work, because they just are waiting for the money come from to the United States, and it's easy way. But we believe like in the future we need to learn how manage this. It probably maybe I can show you like this. Before we used to move the coffee from this patio to the other by by labor. Now we need to build this transporter because every time is less people. In the dryers, we do the same. Before we move the coffee by labor, now we need to build a more industrial way because the labor every time is more difficult, is more expensive.
Yes.
And like Marysabel say, we are so lucky to have customers like you and I, because in that way we can maintain this. Because if we are trying to do this in like a sea market, it's more difficult.
And one thing I always tease Moises, because Moises said, we are not going to grow more. No. But in September, we already finished all the work at the farm. So there are no more work for the people. And then Moises start to plan a new farm. So they start to clean the area, they start to make holes, just to maintain work. And in that way, we are growing and growing. It's like a never ending. But I think that is one point, to maintain them with work all the year long. And they know that we help in that moment, and during the picking time, they will help us to pick the coffee.
I think Moises has been like retiring for the last 5 years I've been with him.
Yeah.
And he has yet to retire. So. Any other questions?
Do you work together with other producers in other countries to develop kind of new processes?
This is a good question, and it's difficult. Bless you. It's difficult because sometimes like a producer, we don't want to share with the other. We are not like this. We are open to show the other the different process. But it's very difficult because everyone is like they believe if they share with me some process, means I know the process and I know the customer, and they feel like I want to take the customer for him. But in our opinion, we need to share more information. We need to share more information about the process, about the varieties, about the way to produce better coffee.
And we are so lucky because sometimes we have group of people that come to our farm, and we show to produce a good bean of coffee, there is no secret. It's only to follow the right way to do it. Wash the coffee, the pulp, fermentate, wash, and dry in a good way. There is no any, but it's that time that everyone wants to put the effort to do it. So, and when we are talking with another producer, some of them, they say, why do you do all this? And we say, yes, it's the only way that you can do it, in traceability, to know that you are doing very good every step of the coffee.
Moises, you said that Marysabel had pushed you to do naturals, and that we had pushed you to do many other things. Maybe you can talk a little bit about why for you it's like a challenge to think about these new ways of producing, and also like what it is like for you now to produce these kinds of coffees, both for you like personally, but also the reality of like producing different kind of coffees in the context of Honduras.
Probably it's because I don't want to go out of my zone of comfortable zone. Then because means more work, or we believe is more work. Probably this is one of the things we need to, for me, start to change. But in another, like sometimes Marysabel say, is because I don't want just to dry coffee. I want to process very well the coffee. Because in another producer, they just say, I produce naturals, but just because they put the coffee in a zone and that's it. No, I want to produce a good coffees, and everything like we want to do in our farm, we want to do in the best way, in all the aspects. And then maybe this is one of the reasons but now I am good.
But
we,
you know,
I found a way to do.
But was very difficult to convince him because he said, if I'm going to produce a natural, it has to be an amazing natural. It has to be clean. He say always, it has to be clean first and in good taste. When the first year he made many experiments with little lots, drying the natural, drying in this way, until he found his own way. Because we depend on the weather too.
And, and another is like probably one of the thing is like a producer, sometimes we just take we follow one fashion just because some buyer or some roaster arrive and tell us about this. But in the end, the producer took the risk to produce these coffees. And sometimes for us like we receive some producer and they start to send us the recipes. But then he arrived, we taste the coffee, probably 10 different lots. And then he said, yeah, tastes good, but you know, I prefer to continue by the wash coffee. And then this is another, and always we have a friend like he say, one very good wash coffee is easy to sell, but with the process is more difficult. And then sometimes the buyer or the roaster need to put in the other side because the producer took the risk to produce this, and it's sometimes for some producer it's not enough money to.
But it's not your case.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for choosing to produce naturals. They are awesome.
Thank you.
I'm already excited to cup some of them later on. However, I have a question related to the dry mill. So I've visited a dry mill in Brazil, and there are these huge machines for quality control, those color sorters and this kind of stuff. Do you use one of those, or how do you maintain quality in the dry mill processing step?
Yes, we do this. We have like in a specific in a dry mill, we have the huller. After this, we pass the coffee for sorter by size, because normally for us, we send the coffee the 15 up screens. Sometimes depend the customer, 16 or sometimes no 20 screens. And then after this, we even, it's not usually, but we bought one machine just to take out the stones. Because if you ask me why the stone appear in the coffee, I don't know, but sometimes appear in the coffee. And we bought one specific machine just to this. And then we pass the coffee for 2 gravity tables, just to be sure have less, take the much of less density coffees. And then before was easy, another time took the labor. The way like we sort the coffee was by hand. But and that time was easier to find specific gumen, because the gumen are more delicate for this work. But now it's impossible, and take a lot of labor and a lot of time, because in our experience, just to sort the coffee, the one amazing gumen can sort by day less than 1 bag. And can you imagine if we need to process 10 containers, we need like 100. And then we need to buy a sorter machine, and we decide we use we have like 4 of these, and then it's very convenient because have more productivity, and you can decide, you can program what color, what kind of defect you want to remove. Yeah,
The question, your question? Ah,
Yes.
okay.
I think we're getting close on needing to go upstairs, so is there any like last burning questions anybody has that they need to ask?
It's more, I just had like a, it's not really a question or anything, but more like a statement. Maybe it's nice for, from the importer side also to know like how important sustainability is, because maybe it's a little direct, I don't mean it that way, it's not a judgment, just more like food for thought, is that as an importer, we try to buy the same volume every year and hopefully increase it a little bit to make it sustainable also. But like Moses mentioned, like it's a little harder to get the 88 or 89 coffees these days. And last crop we noticed, right? Because a lot of the coffees didn't sell. And then we have to sell them at a loss as an importer. And for us it's super important that there's long-term relationships, right? And that is even like, especially in these days where everything is very trendy, and if there's like an anaerobic or whatever, it's very hard for a roaster to sell as well in their shop if it's not like, just doesn't stand out or anything. But I think we need a conversation about like how we score and value coffee as well, because if we want to keep buying the same coffee and they have a bad crop, and then we get messages like, the lot is scoring 1, 2, 3 scores lower, and it doesn't sell, and maybe you go for a different coffee or from a different importer or whatever, which is, I mean, of course I completely understand, but it is something like we cannot have both ways. We're either sustainable and we think long term and we have relationships and we commit to that, and that's why we're all in this together, you know, like they need to pay their workers and need to be able to commit to their workers, and we need to be able to commit to them, and it's like a three-way thing. And if that falls apart, we can no longer sell those coffees. And even if those coffees are like scoring 85 or 86 suddenly 1 year, it's still important to sell that. And it's maybe also nice to know that that loss is taken somewhere. And in this case, it's at the import side, because we have a lot of Honduras left, for example, from last crop that were sold at a loss. So it is important to know that if you want to have a sustainable supply chain for long term, it's just some food for thought to know that to know that. I mean, I used to be a roaster. I had a roastery, so I know how important it is to keep your consumer there with all the trendy stuff, and it's also hard in your market because you know you have a neighbor who might have the anaerobic or the next orange infused coffee or all this stuff. But it is somehow a conversation you need to have with your consumer as well, like with your guests, that even the washed or the naturals, and just a statement. It's not like a judgment or something, because I completely understand that there's hardships at all different chains, but it is something that we need to just step up on and take more responsibility of, I think.
And you know, for example, with you we have a range from we sell to you a range of percent. How do you say?
Score.
Like a score. A score that we sell to you. So this score or no. But for example, we have another buyers that they buy from us, like this quality, and this quality. So that is very important for us. And when Moises was telling about the scores, is because before we used to have a very high score and a very low score. But now that we have been treating the farms in a different way, we are just in one range. So we don't have, for example, we don't have coffees that less than 84, 83.
83
in
the beginning of the crop.
At the beginning of the crop and the end of the crop. And for example, this buyer, we have one range that we sell 82, 84, and we have to sell upper. But it's because we are trying to have more even coffees.
Yeah. Yes, and probably in the end is like all of you or that one of you buy the coffee for us. Please feel free. If one day you find something different in the coffee, or something is you want to tell us, please send a message through Joanne. And we are very open to try to be better, because in the way you are happy, we are happy too.
Yes. This is the long-term relationship, yes.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for asking questions.
Thank you.
For answering all the questions. So upstairs we're going to cut like a